Chapter 1. The Beginning of the Scorn. Clara walked along the sidewalk in the heart of the city, her heart heavy with unease. The summer sun bore down mercilessly, turning the asphalt into a griddle beneath her feet. At just 13 years old, she already felt like a stranger in her own skin, a body that didn't fit the standards the world constantly tried to force upon her. Each step she took echoed on the nearly empty street, a quiet soundtrack to the storm churning inside her. Her large glasses-framed eyes, clouded not only by sunlight but also by shame. She already knew what awaited her. She already knew she was different. As she stepped into the modeling agency, the door clicked shut behind her with a hollow thud. The air inside was cool, saturated with the scent of expensive perfume, and the fluorescent lights cast a stark glow over everything. Clara stood out, awkward and out of place in that polished environment. She knew what she looked like in their eyes, just another girl who didn't fit the mold. All she had ever wanted was to be like her sisters, those flawless models that people admired and idolized. But fate, relentless and indifferent, had given her a body that the glamorous world of modeling didn't consider good enough. She had prepared herself for this. The doors to success were always tightly shut to anyone who didn't meet the exact measurements, the slim frame, the model-esque beauty that agencies worshipped. Clara walked into the reception area with a shy, hopeful smile. The receptionist glanced at her from head to toe, her eyes filled with thinly veiled contempt, her lips curled into a smirk that cut deeper than words. "Are you sure you're in the right place, sweetheart? This is a modeling agency, not a beauty salon," the woman said, her tone drenched in superiority, the kind that came from someone used to judging others from a pedestal. Clara didn't answer. She couldn't. No words could truly capture what she was feeling. Her face flushed with embarrassment, but she didn't let her posture falter. She stood her ground, even as the receptionist's words pierced her pride. She hadn't come to prove anything to them. She had come to prove something to herself, something the world constantly tried to deny her. Soon, she was escorted into a larger room, where the other models were getting ready for a photo shoot. The atmosphere changed the moment she stepped. Incurious eyes turned to her. She noticed the suppressed chuckles, the whispered comments behind manicured hands, the side glances that quickly turned into laughter. The other girls, some only a year or two older than her, looked picture-perfect. Their tall, slender bodies, flawless faces, and designer clothes made them look like they belonged to a different world. Clara felt her own presence shrinking in. Comparison, like she was an intruder in a dream. She had no right to dream. "Come on, Clara, show them what you've got," she whispered to herself, clinging to the small, persistent lie she told herself every day, as if speaking it might somehow make it true. But in that cold, glittering room, words felt powerless. She knew the truth. Her presence was not welcome. Her body, her look, her essence, none of it matched what they expected. The room went quiet as the agency's manager entered. She was tall, thin, and elegant, dressed in sleek black from head to toe. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes were sharp, measuring Clara not with curiosity but with a clinical disinterest. There was no warmth in her gaze, no attempt at kindness. "All right, dear," she said flatly, holding out a designer coat. "Try this on. If you can manage that, maybe we'll consider something." Clara paused for a second, then reached for the coat with trembling hands. As she slipped it on, she felt every pair of eyes settle on her. She could hear the quiet snickers, feel the weight of their judgment like bricks on her back. The sleeves didn't fit right, and no matter how she moved, she felt awkward, out of place, unwanted. She lacked the effortless elegance that others in the room seemed to have been born with. The manager's gaze turned from indifferent to irritated. "You can't even put on a coat without looking clumsy. I'm sorry, but this isn't the place for you." Her words struck Clara like a blow to the chest. For a moment she stood frozen, her face burning with shame. She wanted to disappear, to evaporate into the silence of the room. But she didn't. Not yet. Not this time. She looked up into the woman's eyes, her own filled with a mixture of pain and stubborn resolve. "I can do it. I really can," Clara murmured, mostly to herself. But no one listened. No one cared. At that moment, someone entered the room without. A word, Clara's mother. No one recognized her, not the staff, not the models. Marina, the owner of the agency, watched from a distance, blending into the background like a shadow. She didn't interfere. She had come to see, to observe, to let her daughter face this alone. She knew that if Clara was going to make her mark, it would have to be without the weight of a famous name. Clara walked out of the agency with tears in her eyes, but also with a fire slowly building inside her. She had been dismissed, humiliated, and made to feel invisible. The doors of that world had slammed shut in her face, but she knew deep down that one day she would open her own doors, not the golden ones her mother had built, but her own, crafted from strength, pain, and perseverance. As she stepped into the sunlight once more, the heat wrapped around her like a reminder of the harshness of the path ahead. It would be long, painful, and lonely, but something had awakened in her. Clara wasn't going to be just another forgotten story. She was going to write her own. Chapter 2. The Harsh Reality. The days that followed Clara's visit to the modeling agency were nothing short of torment. She tried to focus on her schoolwork, to laugh with her classmates, and even to enjoy the few moments she shared with her mother. But no matter how much she tried to distract herself, the sting of rejection still pulsed deep within her, like a fresh wound that refused to heal. Every indifferent glance she received was a reminder, a cruel echo of the moment she had been. Dismissed and ridiculed, it felt as if the entire world had come to a silent agreement. Clara didn't belong under the spotlight. She wasn't made for the glamorous world of modeling. She, who looked up to her sisters with so much pride, knew she would never be like them. While they walked down runways under flashing lights, signing million-dollar contracts and gracing magazine covers, Clara was stuck in the shadows, just another girl with the wrong body, another misfit in a world that worshipped perfection. And to her, that felt like an unshakable truth. Clara's home was spacious and luxurious, a clear reflection of all her mother had accomplished over the years. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, designer furniture. It was a house that screamed success. But to Clara, it felt cold, impersonal, like a place where she was merely an awkward piece of furniture that didn't match the decor. Her 4 siblings were all acclaimed models, praised and admired in every room they entered. And Clara, she was the exception, the outlier. They were always slender, always polished, always praised. And she was none of those things. She couldn't understand how her mother, the owner of one of the most successful modeling agencies in the country, could allow her to live in such an illusion. How could she stand by and watch her daughter be torn apart by the very industry she helped build? Did she not see the pain Clara carried? Clara still heard the receptionist's cruel words playing over and over in her head. This is a modeling agency, not a beauty salon. As much as she tried, she couldn't silence that voice. Part of her wondered if the woman had been right all along. Maybe she really wasn't good enough. At home, the stares from her sisters weren't much different. They never said anything. Cruel, not out loud, but their glances held an unspoken judgment, a mixture of pity and distance. They looked at her like she didn't quite belong, like she was a visitor from a world they didn't understand. Clara could feel it, even in the silence. To them, she was someone from the other side, a side where bodies were flawed and value was questioned, not measured in talent or dreams, but in waistlines and cheekbones. One afternoon, Clara wandered into the kitchen for a glass of water. Her mother stood there, deep in conversation with a close friend about an upcoming fashion show. Clara remained quiet, listening from behind the counter, observing the scene like an outsider peeking into someone else's life. Marina, her mother, seemed so composed, so absorbed in her career, so detached from the daughter who stood just feet away. "I'm still not sure if Clara has what it takes to follow this path," the friend murmured gently, probably thinking Clara wasn't close enough to hear. But she did. Every word pierced her like a blade. Clara's eyes met the woman's, briefly. Her pain was unhidden, raw in her gaze. She felt invisible in her own home, unseen by the one person she needed most. Even her mother, though she never admitted it, didn't seem to believe in her. Not truly. "Why can't you just be normal?" "Clara!" That question, asked weeks before by a classmate, now echoed in her head with unbearable force. But Clara didn't want to be normal. She wanted to be extraordinary. The next morning, Clara couldn't bring herself to get out of bed. Her body felt heavy, like it was filled with lead. The weight of disappointment, of rejection, of being misunderstood. It crushed her. She curled up under the covers, asking the universe why her life had to feel like a battle every single day. The world and its cruel standards had no room for someone like her. It was always a fight against something unreachable, something she was told she could never be. But somewhere in that silence, in that moment of despair, something stirred inside her. A spark, a quiet resistance. She was tired of fighting against the current, tired of pretending she didn't care. The world might have decided she wasn't good enough, but she wasn't going to let that be the final word. If they wouldn't see her, she would make them. She would shine in her own way, with or without their approval. It was time for change. And Clara knew that change could only begin when she stopped seeing herself through their eyes and started becoming who she wanted to be. She stood up and walked to the bathroom, her legs weak but her will firm. When she looked into the mirror, she saw something she hadn't seen before. Not the ugly girl, not the girl who didn't fit. She saw Clara, a girl who was different, yes, but who had something powerful inside her. A girl who wasn't defined by dress sizes or polished smiles. A girl with dreams, with pain, with fire. "I'm going to fight for this. I'm beautiful in my own way," she whispered to her reflection, her voice trembling, but real. And for the first time, she believed it. From that day forward, she began writing in her diary. Every single day, pouring out her thoughts, her pain, her hopes. The words became a safe space, a mirror of her soul. Her diary pages were soaked in emotion, rage, sadness, resilience. No one could silence her there. Through those entries, Clara found her voice, her truth, her strength. If she was going to change her life, it would take persistence. The road would be long and full of obstacles. But like a flame igniting deep in her chest, Clara knew she wouldn't give up. Not for them, for herself. Each sentence she wrote, each emotion she captured, made her stronger. The words, born from pain but carried by hope, became both her shield and her sword. Chapter 3. The Drops That Became a Sea. That morning, Clara decided to leave school early. The sky was overcast, and the wind seemed to whisper secrets only she could hear. She walked alone through the streets, feeling the weight of silence, but also the lightness of not having to please anyone. It was her first decision in a long time that didn't involve anyone but herself. She didn't know exactly where she was going. She just knew she needed to get away. From home, from the agency, from the voices that wounded her, even from the mirror. She needed to breathe. She wandered into a small bookstore tucked between two cafes in the heart of the city. There, among dusty covers and the scent of old pages, Clara found something she had never truly felt before: freedom. She grabbed a random book off the shelf and sat on the floor, unjudged, unmeasured, unseen. Just her, alone with words that didn't demand perfection. That's how, by chance, she discovered the biography of a model who had been rejected dozens of times before landing her first job. To the world, I was a freak. To myself, I was just incomplete, one of the pages read. Clara cried. Not a quiet, polite cry. She sobbed like someone tired of being strong, like someone who had been holding back a scream for too long. One of the bookstore clerks approached with a glass of water and a kind gaze. She didn't ask anything. She just sat next to her and waited for the crying to stop. For the first time, someone stayed. Sometimes that's all we need, right? The girl said with a soft smile. Someone who stays. Clara smiled for the first time in days. And in that still shy smile, there was a spark of hope. She returned home with the book in hand and her head buzzing with ideas. She decided she would create a portfolio on her own. She didn't need anyone from the agency. She didn't need applause or runways. She only needed to be seen, to be heard, and above all, to be respected. She grabbed her phone and started recording videos alone in her room. She improvised outfits with bed sheets, colorful fabrics, ribbons. She created poses inspired by her pain. She told stories with her eyes, her movements, her soul. Each camera click was a battle won against the contempt that had long lived in her chest. She posted the videos on an anonymous profile on social media. She didn't use her name, let alone the famous last name of her mother. She wanted to be recognized for who she was, not for who raised her, and slowly her videos started to circulate. Comments began to appear. "This girl has an incredible expression," said one. "She radiates authenticity, and that's rare," said another. Clara read every word with tears in her eyes. She, who had always been the silent one in the corner, was now a voice screaming her worth to the world, but things never changed that quickly, and Clara was about to be reminded of that. One afternoon, her mother walked into her room holding her phone. "Clara, what are these videos?" The tone wasn't proud, it was judgmental. "They're mine. I made them myself. No help. Didn't use anything of yours." Marina frowned, clearly uncomfortable. "You know this world is cruel, don't you? People are going to laugh at you. Is that really what you want for your life?" Clara felt a rush of anger rise in her chest, but it wasn't wild or impulsive. It was steady, mature. For the first time, she looked her mother in the eye without lowering her gaze. "Maybe the world needs to be challenged, Mum. Maybe someone like me is exactly what it needs to see." Her mother said nothing, just turned and left the room. But Clara knew she had left a mark. At school, people began to notice as well. Some mocked her, whispering jokes. Others genuinely praised her. Clara learned not to be shaken by the hate, and to absorb the love. She was growing, and with that growth came a bold idea. Clara would write an open letter, a kind of manifesto. She would put into words everything she had lived through, the humiliation, the judgmental stares, the silences that screamed louder than words. And at the end, she would show that even so, she hadn't given up. She published it on the anonymous profile, along with a video of herself walking alone down a busy avenue, wearing an outfit she had made herself. Every stitch was a piece of her pain, transformed into art. The video exploded. Newspapers began to share it. Influencers reposted it. An independent brand reached out. They wanted to meet the girl behind the camera, but no one knew who she was. Clara knew the secret wouldn't last forever. Sooner or later, the world would find out that the girl from the video was the daughter of the most powerful woman in fashion in the country. But she wasn't in a rush. For now, she just wanted to taste the fight, the victory, and above all, the respect. Chapter 4. The name they pretended to forget. The morning after the fashion show, Clara woke up different. Not because everything had magically changed, but because, for the first time, she no longer carried shame in her chest. She carried pride. The video of the show had been posted by one of the judges, and within hours it had thousands of views. The comments spoke of courage, of real beauty, of representation. Clara read each one with her heart tight, among them messages from other girls who, like her, had been treated as if they were invisible. It was more than just about her. It was about everyone who had ever been silenced by the weight of the standard, and it was time to take an even bigger step. She put on a simple outfit, but with vibrant colors, as if saying, "I'm here, whether you like it or not." She tied her hair in a high bun, just like her mother used to do for fashion campaigns, put on red lipstick, and left. Once again, she walked through the agency's glass doors. Once again, silence fell. But this time, it wasn't a silence of contempt. It was a silence of shock. The receptionist recognized her. Her eyes widened like she had seen a ghost. You're the girl from the video, the show." Clara just smiled. "Do you remember me now?" The buzz began, phones vibrating, eyes meeting. The tension in the air was heavy. Employees, who once turned their backs, were now trying to smile. Some even came closer with fake pats on the back. "I always knew you had potential," said a makeup artist who had once laughed at Clara behind the dressing room. "So proud to see you expressing yourself," lied a producer who had made jokes about her body. But Clara no longer fed off scraps. She walked down the hall toward the director's office, knocked on the door. "Come in," came the cold, sharp voice on the other side. When Clara's mother saw her, she froze. In the same office where she had hosted famous models and multi-million-dollar campaigns, now stood the daughter she had always tried to hide. "Clara." "Good morning, Ms. Director." The irony was there, subtle but strong. "I came to speak as a professional." Her mother leaned back in the chair. "You exposed us. You put the agency at risk." "No, Mom. I exposed the truth. The real risk was pretending only one kind of beauty deserved space." Her mother stood up. "This isn't personal. It's the market. The market you helped shape." Clara stepped forward. "But I'm not here to apologize. I'm here to tell you the world has changed, and I changed with it." They stared at each other for a long, painful moment. There they were, two women, one trapped in the past of labels and perfection, the other with the future burning in her voice. That's when the door opened, and Clara's sisters walked in. One by one, beautiful, yes, but now insecure. They had seen the video. They had read the comments. And for the first time, they saw Clara not as the chubby or clumsy sister, but as someone bigger than any runway. "Clara, one of them began, but her voice broke. "I know." Clara didn't need explanations. "I stayed silent for too long, too." Silence fell again, but this time it was filled with respect. Her mother let out a deep sigh. "What do you want?" Clara breathed, deeply, painfully. "I want a place in this agency, but not for me. I want a program for children who don't fit the mold. I want to give a voice to those who never had a chance. And I want you, as the founder, to support it publicly." Her mother looked at her as if seeing a stranger, but deep down, she knew the girl standing in front of her had always been like this. The world was just seeing it now, and in that moment, for the first time, she didn't see a daughter outside the standard. She saw a leader, a woman, and swallowing her own pride, she answered, "It's done." Clara smiled, not because she had won, but because finally she had been heard. And that day, in that room filled with mirrors, cameras, and painful memories, she felt something she had never felt there before: freedom. Chapter 5. The New Runway. Months had passed since the day Clara, with her feet firmly on the ground and her soul burning with courage, demanded a new space in her mother's agency. And that space, once thought impossible, now had a name. Color, voices, and laughter. The Mirror Me project wasn't just an idea. It was a movement. The old back room of the agency, once filled with rejected clothes and forgotten dreams, had been transformed into a vibrant studio. Colorful walls, frameless mirrors, and a bold phrase printed at the top. You don't need to fit in. The world needs to make room. There, children of all ages and shapes gathered. Some overweight, others with physical disabilities, many with invisible scars on their souls caused by rejections far too cruel for childhood. And all of them had the same light in their eyes that brought a lump to Clara's throat. They didn't come to learn how to walk the runway. They came to truly see themselves, to accept themselves, to love themselves. In that space, no one talked about losing weight or hiding flaws. They talked about art, about authenticity, about belonging, and who taught the classes. She did. Clara, now 14, had become a global reference in fashion inclusion. Her name echoed in interviews, documentaries, and invitations to major events. But whenever someone asked about the most important moment in her career, she smiled and said, "It was when a girl with vitiligo told me, 'Now I think I'm beautiful.'" That afternoon, the agency was getting ready for a special event, the first runway show of the Mirror Me project. But it wouldn't take place on just any runway. It would be on the same stage where, months earlier, Clara had been ignored, humiliated, and rejected. The grand hall of Elise agency, packed with big names, influencers, and fashion critics. Clara's mother, now quiet and observant, waited for her at the side of the stage. "Are you sure you want to do this here?" she asked. "This is exactly where it needs to happen," Clara replied firmly. "Some people will still judge." "I didn't come to silence judgment, Mum. I came to teach others not to stay silent." Her mother swallowed hard. There was a quiet pride in her, almost apologetic, but real. The lights came on. The music began, not frantic like in traditional shows. It was soft, emotional, as if each note whispered, "Breathe, you're safe." And then, one by one, the children began to walk out. Boys and girls with real bodies, unsteady steps, and smiles that lit up their faces like fireworks. The audience used to fabricated beauty fell silent. Then they were moved, and in the end, they stood up. They applauded, they cried, because on that runway truths were walking, truths no one could ignore. And then, at last, Clara stepped onto the stage, wearing a yellow light dress designed by an independent stylist who had also once been rejected for not fitting in. Her hair was loose, natural, her makeup soft, and her strength impossible to describe. She walked slowly, locking eyes with everyone, as if saying, "You see me now, but I've always been here." At the end, she stopped at the center, took the microphone and said, "When I first walked into this agency, I was just a fat girl with a dream and 4 model sisters. No one saw me, not when I smiled, not when I cried. But I've learned that the value of beauty isn't in the mirror. It's in those brave enough to see beyond it." A sacred silence filled the room, and then they clapped again, stronger, more real. It wasn't pity anymore, it was admiration. In the days that followed, Clara received offers from all over the world. Inclusive campaigns, speaking invitations, movie appearances, but her focus remained on the project. She knew that the spotlight of fame would eventually fade, but the seeds she was planting there, those would grow for generations. One day, as she walked down the agency hallway, she found her mother quietly watching the children through the studio window. "I never thought I'd see this here," her mother said, voice trembling. "Me neither, but I'm glad we can change how the story ends." Her mother looked at her, and for the first time, there was no coldness, only a quiet, sincere affection. "Thank you for not giving up, not on yourself, not on me." Clara smiled and replied, The world needs more people who insist on existing, even when others try to dim their light. In the agency's window, there was now a new photo, not of famous models, but of a smiling girl in a yellow dress, surrounded by diverse children and a sign that read, "Beauty is everything that courage allows to bloom." And so, Clara claimed, what the world once tried to deny her, her place, and more than that, she created space for many others to bloom too.